He was born in a tiny house on the edge of a volcanic island in the Atlantic Ocean. The fourth child of a man who watered the local football pitch for extra money and a woman who worked as a cook. A doctor told his mother to abort him. She refused. He was cut from Sporting Lisbon's youth academy at 15. He showed up at Manchester United's training ground at 16, speaking almost no English, wearing cheap clothes and carrying one bag. His teammates laughed at him behind his back. He cried in the bathroom of his first apartment in Manchester because he was so homesick. The manager told him he was too flashy, too selfish, too obsessed with tricks to ever be a great player. He became the greatest goal scorer in the history of professional football. He won 5 Ballon d'Or awards. He scored over 900 career goals. He did it while carrying a father he watched die of alcoholism, a son he raised alone after the mother walked away at birth, and a daughter who almost did not survive her first hours of life. He did it with a body he rebuilt from scratch after surgeons told him a knee injury might end his career at 19. He did it by waking up before his teammates, staying after everyone else had gone home, and sleeping in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber in his bedroom, like a man who had decided that rest itself was something he could optimize. The world thinks it knows this story. It does not. The dates are real. The medical records are real. The testimonies of his coaches, teammates, and doctors are real. What people still argue about is whether Cristiano Ronaldo became what he became because of pure God-given talent, or because of something rarer, stranger, and more unsettling than talent. This is the story almost nobody tells correctly. He was not supposed to be born. His mother, Maria Dolores, was already raising 3 children in a house with no running water in Funchal, Madeira, when she became pregnant for the 4th time. The family had almost nothing. His father, José Diniz Aveiro, worked as a gardener for the local council and drank too much and had too little, and never found a way out of either problem. Maria Dolores went to a doctor who told her that terminating the pregnancy was the sensible choice given her circumstances. She went home and prayed. On February 5, 1985, Cristiano Ronaldo dos Santos Aveiro was born. He was named after Ronald Reagan because his father admired the American president. He was the only child in the house who seemed immune to stillness. From the beginning, there was something in him that could not stop moving. Neighbors remembered him juggling a ball in the alley outside the house at ages when other children were barely walking steadily. His older brother Hugo would later say that Cristiano was never just playing. Even at 6 years old, it looked like he was training. He joined a local club called Andorinha, where his father worked as the kit man. Then Nacional. Then, at 12 years old, he was identified by Sporting Lisbon, the top academy in Portugal, and brought to the mainland for trials. He was 12 years old, alone in a city that was not his, missing a family that could barely afford to call him, sleeping in dormitories with boys who did not know him and did not go out of their way to welcome him. He had a thick Madeiran accent that the other boys found funny. He cried himself to sleep more nights than he has ever publicly admitted. And then he went to training the next morning, and he was better than all of them. At 15, he was diagnosed with a racing heart condition, a tachycardia that required surgery. Doctors told him the operation carried risk. There was a possibility he might never play competitive football again. He went in for surgery. He was back on the training pitch within weeks. His coaches at Sporting later said they had never seen anything like it. Not the recovery speed. The expression on his face while he was recovering, which was not fear and was not patience, but something closer to fury at the time the injury was costing him. At 16, Sporting played Manchester United in a preseason friendly. Sir Alex Ferguson watched from the sideline as this teenager in the Sporting jersey dismantled his entire first team with footwork so advanced it looked rehearsed. At halftime, Ferguson's senior players reportedly came to him and asked him to sign the boy before someone else did. Ferguson signed him the next morning. Cristiano Ronaldo arrived at Old Trafford for £12.5 million and immediately became the most unpopular person in his own dressing room. He was not unpopular because he was unpleasant. He was unpopular because he was unrelenting. He did stepovers in training that served no practical purpose in a training drill. He demanded the ball in situations where the smarter play was to move it quickly. He stayed behind after sessions to practice free kicks alone until the groundskeepers asked him to leave. His teammates thought he was showing off. Some of them said so publicly years later. Roy Keane, not a man who gave compliments like candy, later said that what he initially mistook for arrogance in the young Ronaldo was something else entirely. It was need. The boy needed to be the best in the room at all times because somewhere deep in his architecture, second place felt like failure in a way that Keane recognized and respected. Then the knee happened. In 2008, at the peak of his first great Manchester United season, Ronaldo suffered a knee injury serious enough that surgeons privately told the club there was concern about his long-term ability to perform at elite level. He was 23. He had just won his first Ballon d'Or. He had just had his finest season in English football, and he spent that summer in a rehabilitation room in Portugal working with a personal physio with an intensity that the physio would later describe in interviews as frightening, not because of the effort, because of the silence. Most athletes talk during rehab. They complain, they joke, they humanize the pain. Ronaldo did not speak. He just worked. He came back faster than the medical timeline suggested was possible. He came back better. He went to Real Madrid for £80 million, which was at the time the largest transfer fee in the history of football. And he spent the next 9 years turning that number into an undervaluation. 4 Champions League titles, 4 Ballon d'Or awards at Madrid alone, 311 league goals in 332 appearances. Numbers that do not belong to the category of exceptional, and belong instead to the category of things that require a separate explanation. The separate explanation is not talent. Or rather, it is not only talent. His former physical trainer at Real Madrid, Antonio Pintus, spoke publicly about what he found when he first tested Ronaldo's body at 32 years old. A 32-year-old elite footballer is, by most physiological measures, already in decline. Muscle mass drops, recovery speed slows. The body begins the process of negotiation with age that eventually every body loses. When Pintus measured Ronaldo at 32, he found the biological profile of a man somewhere between 20 and 23 years old. Body fat percentage at 7. Muscle recovery rate at a level Pintus said he had never recorded in a player of that age. He asked Ronaldo what he was doing. Ronaldo described a sleep schedule, a diet, a supplement routine, a cryotherapy regimen, and a training load outside of team sessions that Pintus later said no medical professional would have recommended to a player his age. Not because it was dangerous, because it was not supposed to be sustainable. Ronaldo had not been told it was unsustainable, so he sustained it. His father, José Diniz, died of liver failure caused by alcoholism in September 2005. Ronaldo was 20 years old, already at Manchester United, already becoming something, and his father died having never seen what his son became. Ronaldo has spoken about his father more in the last decade than he did in the first decade of his career, and what he says is consistent. He does not excuse the drinking. He does not rewrite the poverty or the absence or the damage that a father who could not conquer his own demons does to a child who is watching. He says he loved him. He says he dedicated his career to him. He had his father's face tattooed onto his body. The man who had no running water in his childhood home, and a father who worked the touchline as a kit man, became the most followed person in the history of social media, and the only person he wanted to show it to was gone before it started. In 2010, a son was born. Cristiano Ronaldo Jr. arrived via surrogate, and the identity of the biological mother has never been revealed. Ronaldo has never named her. He has said only that she signed away all rights, and that his son is entirely his. He raised the boy alone for 3 years before meeting Georgina Rodriguez, a Spanish model who was working in a Gucci store in Madrid when they were introduced. What he said about those 3 years of solo fatherhood is something almost no profile of him includes. He said they were the years he learned that there was something that made him more afraid than losing a match or failing a fitness test. The fear of not being enough for a child who was depending entirely on him. He said his son made him, for the first time in his life, vulnerable in a way that football never could. In June 2017, Georgina gave birth to twins. The boy, Angel, did not survive. He was born and he died on the same day. Ronaldo made a public statement that the same day he lost his son, his daughter Bella was fighting for her life in intensive care. He said he and Georgina were destroyed.